Ladies and gentlemen, give me just 54 seconds of your time, because that's all I need to flip the switch inside of you. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. In less than a minute, I want to prove something powerful to you. That motivation isn't something you wait for. It's something you ignite. The truth is, most people spend their lives searching for a spark, but what if you realize the spark has been in you all along? What if in the next 54 seconds, you discovered the fire you've been carrying, but never lit? I'm not here to just inspire you for a moment. I'm here to make you dangerously motivated. So much so that excuses don't survive around you, fear can't breathe near you, and doubt has no home inside you. If you're ready, let's use this one short moment to create a lifetime of unstoppable drive. True motivation isn't found, it's created. And the moment you decide to act is the moment you become unstoppable. Motivation is not some magical force floating in the air waiting for you to catch it. It's not hiding behind a corner, waiting for the right time to reveal itself. It doesn't suddenly show up one morning like the sunrise, knocking on your door, saying, "Today is your day." No, motivation is built, forged, and crafted through decisions. The most dangerous mistake people make is believing that motivation is something they need to feel before they act. They wait for energy, they wait for clarity, they wait for the perfect moment, but waiting has never created momentum. Motivation does not live in waiting, it lives in doing. The decision to move forward, to take that first uncomfortable step, to lean into the unknown, even when you don't feel ready. That is where real motivation begins. Think about how many people you know who keep saying, "I'll start when I feel motivated." They wait for that Monday morning, for January 1st, for the moment when everything in life feels aligned. But that moment rarely comes, and even when it does, it doesn't stay. The truth is, if you depend on motivation to arrive first, you will stay stuck forever. Because motivation doesn't lead to action, action leads to motivation. The fire is not lit because you want it to be lit, it's lit because you strike the match. And the match is always a choice. Every time you move when you don't feel like moving, every time you push when it would be easier to quit, every time you step forward without certainty. That is you building motivation, not finding it. Motivation is like momentum, and momentum is not given, it's earned. Imagine pushing a heavy rock. At first, it feels impossible. You lean into it and it doesn't move. You push harder and it still doesn't move. You start sweating, straining, wondering if it's even possible. But then slowly, after enough effort, it shifts. And once it shifts, it becomes lighter to push, easier to move, faster to roll. That's how motivation works. The first push is the hardest, the slow grind feels unbearable. But once you move, once you take that first action, it gets easier. And soon the momentum carries you further than you thought possible. People who wait for motivation to push them are standing in front of the rock wishing it would roll on its own. People who decide to act, or even when it feels pointless, are the ones who eventually make the rock unstoppable. You've seen this in your own life. Think back to a time you didn't want to do something. Go to the gym, study, make the phone call, have the hard conversation. You told yourself, "I don't feel like it right now." But on the days you did it anyway, something strange happened. Halfway through the workout, you felt energized. 10 minutes into the study session, your focus sharpened. As soon as you dialed the number, your confidence grew. The act of doing created the motivation you thought you needed to start with. Action creates clarity, and clarity feeds motivation. This is why successful people aren't the ones waiting for inspiration. They are the ones moving forward when everyone else is waiting. And here's the difference between people who stay stuck and people who rise. Stuck people look for permission. Motivated people build discipline. Stuck people ask, "How do I get motivated?" Motivated people say, "I will act first, and motivation will catch up." That's the secret. You don't get motivated and then act. You act, and then you get motivated. It flips everything upside down. You no longer have to rely on your feelings. You no longer have to wait for the perfect timing. You take action in the absence of motivation, and by doing so, you create it. That's why I say true motivation is created. Because the moment you choose action, the moment you decide, the moment you take that first uncomfortable step, you unleash something inside of you that cannot be stopped. Look at anyone who has ever achieved something extraordinary. Athletes, entrepreneurs, leaders, creators. They didn't wait for motivation. They had mornings where they didn't feel like training. They had nights where exhaustion was louder than discipline. They had moments of doubt, fear, insecurity. But they acted anyway. They built their motivation by stacking action on top of action, decision on top of decision. Each time they chose to move forward, they reinforced a new identity, an identity of someone who doesn't wait, someone who doesn't need permission, someone who knows that action is the spark that lights everything else. And here's what makes this powerful. Once you understand that you don't need to feel ready, you don't need to feel inspired, you don't need to wait for motivation, you set yourself free. You are no longer chained to waiting for the right time, the right energy, the right circumstance. You don't need any of those. You just need to move. And the beauty of moving is that every step you take creates more fuel, more energy, more confidence. It's like a snowball rolling down a hill. At first, it's small, fragile, easy to stop. But once it starts rolling, it grows, it builds, it becomes a force that nothing can stand against. That's what your motivation becomes when you create it through action. It starts small, it feels weak, but if you keep moving, it becomes unstoppable. The real danger is that most people never get past the first push. They try once, it feels hard, they stop. They tell themselves, see, I knew I wasn't motivated enough. But they don't realize they quit right before the momentum kicked in. They stop right before the fire caught flame. And so they live their lives convinced that motivation is something they lack, when in reality, it's something they never allowed themselves to build. The ones who succeed, the ones who become unstoppable, are not the ones who had endless motivation from the start. They are the ones who decided to act long enough for motivation to grow inside them. They were willing to endure the hard part, the heavy part, the slow part, until it shifted. And once it shifted, nothing could stop them. This is why the decision to act is everything. That decision is the turning point. The moment you decide to move, even without motivation, is the moment you separate yourself from the majority. Because the majority wait, but you move. The majority talk, but you do. The majority want, but you build. That's what makes you unstoppable. Not some external force, not some wave of inspiration that comes and goes, but your decision to create motivation every single time you take action. Dangerous motivation is when your drive becomes stronger than your excuses, louder than your fears, and impossible to ignore. Most people live in a cycle of hesitation because their excuses sound convincing, their fears feel real, and their doubts grow louder than their inner voice. But dangerous motivation is different. It's not the kind of motivation that comes and goes like a spark in the dark. It's not a fleeting burst of energy that fades the moment life gets hard. Dangerous motivation is a force. It is raw, relentless, and powerful. It is the kind of motivation that doesn't just move you. It moves everything around you. When you have dangerous motivation, excuses shrink, fear trembles, and obstacles that once looked massive begin to look like stepping stones. Excuses are the first enemies of progress. Everyone has them. They sound logical, they sound comforting, they sound protective. I'm too tired. I don't have the time. I'll start tomorrow. Excuses are easy to believe because they shield us from effort, but they also chain us to regret. Dangerous motivation is when your drive overpowers every excuse before it can even take root. When the thought of wasting another day hurts more than the discomfort of putting in the work. It's when you look at the excuse, and instead of surrendering, you crush it with the weight of your determination. Because excuses are fragile compared to the strength of a person who has decided to stop negotiating with themselves. Dangerous motivation doesn't entertain excuses. It eliminates them. Then there are fears, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. Fear whispers in your mind that it's safer not to try, that it's better not to risk, that you should just stay where you are. And the truth is, fear will always be there. You can't silence it completely. But dangerous motivation doesn't require you to be fearless. It requires you to be louder than your fear. It's when your drive speaks so strongly, so clearly, that fear gets drowned out. Fear says, what if I fail? Dangerous motivation responds, what if I succeed? Fear says, this is too risky. Dangerous motivation says, not trying is the biggest risk of all. Fear says, you're not ready. Dangerous motivation says, I'll never be ready if I don't start now. That's the shift. That's when your voice becomes stronger than the voice of fear, and you begin to move despite the trembling, despite the uncertainty, despite the unknown, and then there are doubts. Doubts are the silent killers of dreams. They creep in quietly, questioning your ability, questioning your worth, questioning your path. Doubt doesn't always scream. It whispers, and sometimes the whisper is more dangerous than a shout. But when your motivation becomes dangerous, doubt no longer controls you. Dangerous motivation turns doubt into fuel. Every time your mind says, "You can't," you answer, "Watch me." Every time someone tells you it's impossible, you reply with action instead of words. Dangerous motivation is that unshakable belief that even if you don't have it all figured out, even if you don't know the full path ahead, you are still going to move. And in that movement, your doubt gets exposed for what it really is. Just a fragile illusion. Dangerous motivation is dangerous precisely because it makes you unstoppable to the outside world. People around you begin to notice. They see the way you refuse to quit, the way you keep going when others would have stopped, the way your energy doesn't fade even when the odds are stacked against you. They might call you obsessed, relentless, extreme, but that's what it takes to break through mediocrity. Dangerous motivation is not about being reckless. It's about being unshakable. It's about carrying a fire that doesn't go out when the wind blows, a fire that grows stronger with every challenge. Because every time life tests you, instead of breaking, you burn brighter. Every obstacle becomes proof of your resilience. Every setback becomes a story of your comeback. Every failure becomes the foundation of your growth. The reason it's called dangerous motivation is because it makes you a threat to your old self, to your comfort zone, to the excuses and fears that once had power over you. It's dangerous to the version of you that wasted time, dangerous to the habits that kept you small, dangerous to the doubts that once convinced you to settle. Dangerous motivation destroys the prison you built for yourself and hands you the keys to freedom. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for approval. It doesn't rely on outside validation. It comes from within, and once it's unleashed, nothing can contain it. And here's the truth: people will feel the weight of your dangerous motivation. Some will be inspired, others will feel threatened, because when you rise, you shine a light on the excuses they still cling to. When you refuse to quit, you expose the fact that they have. When you keep pushing, you remind them of the potential they abandoned. That's why dangerous motivation is powerful. It doesn't just change you, it forces everything around you to shift. It challenges the people you know. It shakes the systems you've lived in. It redefines what's possible, not only for you, but for everyone watching. And that's why it can't be ignored. You can ignore average motivation. You can brush off a little spark of inspiration, but you cannot ignore someone who is driven at a level so fierce, so determined, so untouchable that nothing can stop them. A dangerous motivation isn't about hype. It's about depth. It's not about shouting affirmations or chasing temporary energy. It's about building an inner drive so strong that even on your worst days, you keep moving. Even when you're tired, you keep showing up. Even when you fail, you stand back up. Dangerous motivation is not about being perfect. It's about being relentless. It's the choice to keep going when the average person stops. It's the decision to rise when everything in you wants to lay down. It's the refusal to let circumstances, excuses, fears, or doubts decide your future. Because when your drive is stronger than your excuses, louder than your fears, and impossible to ignore, you become the kind of person who doesn't just chase dreams. You catch them, you live them, and you turn them into reality